So it's been a few days since the announcement earlier this week that Nintendo would be discontinuing and closing down the Wii U and 3DS eShops. And just to quickly go over the announcement, just in case you didn't get the memo, Nintendo put out a press release that said the following: as of late March 2023, it will no longer be possible to make purchases in Nintendo eShop for the Wii U system and for the Nintendo 3DS family of games. It will also no longer be possible to download free content, including game demos. Further, as this date draws closer, related services will cease to function. As of May 23rd, 2022, it will not be possible to use a credit card to add funds to an account in Nintendo eShop or Wii U for the Nintendo 3DS family. As of August 29, 2022, it will no longer be possible to use a Nintendo eShop cards to add funds to an account in Nintendo eShop on Wii U or the 3DS family of systems. However, it will still be possible to redeem download codes up until late March 2023. Even after late March 2023 and for the foreseeable future, it will still be possible to re-download games and DLC, receive software updates, and enjoy online play on Wii U and the 3DS family of systems. So the TLDR of all that is that the Nintendo eShop for the Wii U and the 3DS will be going down in March of 2023, approximately 12 months from the making of this episode. Now, quick few things to mention here. Although Nintendo is offering a 1-year grace period, you really only have about 4 months to make purchases with your credit card. And if you have eShop cards, then you can still redeem them up until next year. But really, most people are going to have the next 4 months to kind of settle up any purchases that they have on these particular stores. So don't kind of feel like you have a whole year to make purchases. Most people after the first 4 months aren't going to be able to purchase any 3DS games and Wii U games beyond that date. So what are my thoughts about the closure of these eShops for the Wii U and the 3DS? Well, it's typical Nintendo business. My take is that this was inevitable, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. I should also point out that while others will argue that, you've had plenty of time to buy 3DS games on the eShop, and other people will say, well, no one even cared about the Wii U anyway, so what's the big deal? Really, there's a bigger story here. There's a bigger picture than just that kind of mentality, that you should be focusing on just the individual system. But if you are talking about those types of things, well, I can easily counter that by suggesting that we can compare it to the Xbox 360 Microsoft Store, where you've been able to purchase games since 2005. And there's really no danger of that closing down anytime soon. Now, sure, over the years, there's been many games that have been delisted thanks to licensing issues and other issues like that. But ultimately, I can still purchase games on the 360 Microsoft Store as I could back in 2005. And, unless there is kind of viable alternatives, then I think that is the right move. Even Sony last year that announced that they were closing down the Vita and the PS3 PlayStation stores quickly read the room after lots of backlash online, and they reversed their decision to keep both stores up until further notice. Now, that further notice could well be the introduction of the Spartacus service that they're rumored to be providing this year. We don't know. But Sony obviously listened to the outcry and the feedback of consumers and decided, at least until further notice, and let's be very clear, this isn't a permanent thing, but we don't know when Sony will probably take another look at this. But hopefully when they do, there will be an option to play these old games on modern hardware. Now, the Vita, I should also add, sold far less than the 3DS, which sold over 70 million units, and Nintendo still feels compelled to close the online store. But I think what is really concerning to me, above and beyond anything else, is Nintendo's refusal to offer any alternative. Xbox has a backward compatibility program which isn't perfect by any stretch, but it allows you to take your large chunk of games with you to modern hardware. And this is really the crux of the issue for me. Many fans will be quick to tell me that you've had 10 plus years to make any purchases you want for the Wii and the 3DS, but that's never really been the issue. I hear arguments all the time about no one cared about the Wii U, so why are people caring now? And the reality is, emulators exist for both the 3DS and the Wii. Cemu can run games like Breath of the Wild and make them look far, far better than they were originally intended at 4K at 60 frames per second. and it's just now becoming open source. Citra, a popular 3DS emulator, is also very impressive. And the bigger issue for me is that Nintendo, once again, has failed to come up with any viable alternatives. In their now deleted FAQ, they even claimed that there would be no plans to offer classic content in other ways. And this shows to me that Nintendo is not willing to take any responsibility, and it's a case of too bad, you had your chance, and now we're going to take our ball and walk away. And unlike Sony, who did reverse their decision to close their stores last year, Nintendo unfortunately is unlikely to reverse their decision. So once again, it's up to emulation, piracy, and ROMs that will preserve these games, just like it has always been. And if you own original hardware, both systems are easily modded. So I guess it's time for me to make updated videos on how to preserve your games. You can dump your cartridges and Wii U to ROM images safely and legally, and put your physical versions away for storage or safekeeping. Now, I did make a semi-sarcastic tweet the other day that the Switch eShop will close in 2029, but it does make you think. All of a sudden, you can't rule it out. There's just that doubt in your mind, isn't there? Now, many people are 100% convinced that the successor to the Switch will be fully backward compatible. But what if it isn't? I mean, take a look at Nintendo's history. There's nothing set in stone here. And even more so, there are some technical reasons why backward compatible Switch games on any other hardware than a Tegra X1 would be challenging. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, and I personally would expect that there will be some level of backward compatibility on whatever comes next. But who knows? We're talking about Nintendo here. They could completely switch direction, no pun intended of course, to whatever comes next. So in conclusion, I am very disappointed at this closure, but it's typical Nintendo business. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not about the Wii U as a failed console and people suddenly caring about it. 70 million people owned a 3DS. This is a bigger picture issue. Nintendo learnt nothing from the closure of the Wii eShop, and games like the Rebirth series on the Wii are still lost forever. And it's up to studios now to remake these games or remaster these games, and that can be a cool business model for them, but it unfortunately also means that many games will be lost forever, and that is just a very, very sad state of affairs. I do wish Nintendo had learned some things from the Wii eShop closure, but unfortunately they have not, and here we are. I think this is a very disappointing announcement. It's a typical Nintendo announcement. They don't really seem to care about their legacy. And I also want to say, to finish up, that this is not about preservation in the traditional sense, because look, let's be honest, all these games are already dumped. They're available on the internet. You can go to places like archive.org and you can see the entire set of 3DS games, the entire Wii U collection. All those games exist on the internet. You can find them and you can download them. And Nintendo surely has a vault of all these games as well. So these games are preserved. And there is no recourse to suggest that Nintendo is interested in bringing these games back in any capacity on modern hardware, especially when you consider the now deleted FAQ statement. It's basically the equivalent of when Don Matrix said, we've got a system for that, it's called the Xbox 360. What we're seeing here is pretty much shades of the same thing. And unfortunately, it's the consumer that ends up losing at the end of the day. But they are my thoughts and opinions on the closure of the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShops in March of 2023. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I know a lot of people have differing opinions about this, and everyone has a voice, so I'll be reading the comments and listening to what you guys have to say. But for now, we are going to leave it here for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to put a like on it, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.